All right, so I'm covering on some of the important topic. I covered in the during the regular classes on the Tuesday classes. So one was the inductive method and the deductive method. I classified as one would be very useful for the quantitative method, and another would be very useful for the qualitative method. So you can come back to the textbook and the lecture slide for more details. But I want to pay more attention for the special topic. So the sampling method was covered in 1 week, maybe 3 or 2 weeks ago, but I wanted to add more details because that will be very important for your midterm exam. So there are two types of the sampling method, as non-probability sampling as a probability sampling. So non-probability sampling is that it will use a less qualified and less systematic method, but using the inconveniency and using the more proximity or the accessibility, because the chance of the selection of the participants or the respondents are not specified. So there are four types of the sampling: non-probability sampling as convenience sampling, and the purposive sampling, snowball sampling, and the quota sampling. All right, so the convenience sampling is called as the graph sampling, the opportunity, or the accidental and the haphazard sampling, because we do not guarantee, so we do not have any of the guarantee of the representativeness, which means whether the sample data look like the population data or the follows the proportion and the structure of the population data of our interest. But it will be much easier because for the ways of the research, like a pilot study or the exploration, that will be very useful because it's very easy, very quick, and sometimes, you don't need to have much money for that. For example, so eventually you learn that one of my research topics, so Professor Lee was working on the acceptance of the death penalty by the trust level. So those who are trusting others, the red color, they are less likely to accept the death penalty because they believe that instead of the very hard levels of the penalty, they would believe that there are other ways to educate them or to manipulate the possibility of the problems. So if you're living in your home, in your neighbor town, or if you're living in your dormitory, you are opening the window, meeting the people and asking their opinion about the death penalty. So this is the convenience sampling, that because you are using your accessibility of the sample or the potential sample. Or, so as specified in the textbook, so let's suppose that there are 100 people in your study population or in your area. So 88% would be the non-Hispanic, the white man, the white, and half as a white woman, half as a white man, and 12% of the population, or in the example, the possible sample would be the African American woman and the African man. So 12 point and the 80%. So this is the African American on the sample population, and it is the white population. But by mistake or by chance, you use the convenience sampling, and only the sample was selected from only a white. So the white man, and there are the 7 white women. So we had the 10 sample. Any problem we would have would be the bias. The bias means some members of the population are systematically more or less likely to be selected. And the problem with this sample is, even though in our study population, there are some proportion of the African American men and women, but they were not selected in the sample, which means we cannot find any information in our sample data regarding the African American man or woman. So this is the bias sample, and we can make a very big and strong arguments from the bias sample, because there will be many of the criticism on that. So the pros of the convenience sampling will be the suitable for the initial pilot study, easier and cheaper than other sampling method, but cons of it cannot be attributed to the target population, no representativeness, and we cannot make a very big arguments on that. So adding a little bit more the clarification and the justification is the purposive sampling or the judgmental sampling. So adding some more criteria, because we would be, or the researcher want to have some the targeted population and setting up the standards and then setting whether the population or the sample will satisfy the standard or not. So that might be very good if we have a good justification to set up the sample. Alright, so this is an example I provided during the class. So this is the one of my colleague in the UPenn, Professor Park, and he decided to make the investigation about the working experience of Asian American man or woman or the Korean or the Korean American. So the justification or the purpose is the collecting the sample from the Asian American or the Korean American within a range of 25 through 39 because he want to investigate their job experience in the United States as an immigrant, the population. So that will be very good sometimes because it's very clear that they want to focus on the Asian American population who had the working experience in the United States. Or let's suppose that so you are visiting the St. Bernard Hospital in the downtown of the Jonesboro, and they classified that you want to clarify whether there was very effective impact of the medication. So there are 2 time points, and you recruited patients who took the medication. Because if we want to measure the impact of the medication, you need to limit the sample within the patient who took the medication, right? If you should collect the sample from the Arkansas State University who never ever taken any of those types of the medication, this is not very well matched with our purpose of the study. So in the judgment sample, you can measure whether it had the medication impact or not. So you can use that. So it's low cost usually because it has only very small number of a population and small number of the sample, but we do not have the represent sample, and it's very hard to judgment standards, so that will be problem. The snowball sampling is starting from the very small amount of the people because usually it is not accessible. So if it's very sensitive data, for example, the suicidal ideation of the refugee from North Korea is very hard. So even though I came from South Korea, it's very hard to recruit the people because they do not disclose their identity a lot. But eventually, you would have some family who are from the refugee from the North Korea and ask them to introduce any of the refugees they knew, and then they recruited another one because they introduced that and adding more and more number, and then we would have the more accumulated number of the sample. Right? So initially started from the 1, but they will be accumulated up to 20 or 30. So the secret, so if these are the population very forbidden or very hard to access, they will be great, but still risk of bias and the time consuming does not provide representative sample. The quota sampling is very specified and very structured one. For example, you'd have many quota of the standards, many of the preset standards. For example, so in terms of the population, if we collect the sample from the Arkansas, the whites would be the 68%, about 69%, and the blue color is the African American, and the third largest group would be the Hispanic or Latino. So if we collect a sample in the Arkansas, you'd specify that, okay, so out of 100 sample, so 100 individuals in the sample, it should be, so the 69% should be. So it means that 69 individuals should be the non-Hispanic white, and around the 15%, 15 individuals should be African American, and around the 9 or 8 would be the Hispanic within the sample. So you are setting up the pre-specified characteristic based on the proportion of the population in the United States or in Arkansas to make the more representative sample. So the quota sampling has a more criteria you can add up to make the more representative sample. Alright, time and cost efficient, and not very always very representative, but sample data will be not very reliable if we do not have the very clear standards. Alright, so probability sampling is the general term. The sample is according to the probability theory, which means we can specify the chance of the selection. So typically more representative, and there would be the less bias, so we can avoid it. So simple random sampling, the systematic sampling, and the stratified sampling, and the multi-species sampling from the probability sampling. The simple random sampling is just a very simple method. So based on the random procedure, so you can use the table, the randomized table. So out of 100, so which with a very homogeneous population, you can select the 10 cases, for example, based on number. So within the random table, this is the 12, and you are picking on 12 here, and the 97 here, the ID 97 here, 46 here, 87 here. So you can find those sample. And for example, sleep hours of the mental health would be your research topic, and you are selecting 10 participants from the students in the A-State University. So by using this Excel formula, so you don't need to learn it because I'm not covering it in this semester. By using the random table, so you could make the random table like this, and 23, 93, 52, and then you could select those samples. So 23, 93, 52, 75, 92, you could find in the from previous data of the sample, the table. So you can select the 10 cases out of the 100 A-State University students. The pros of the minimizing selection bias, but still not suitable for the heterogeneous population. Providing a full list of population could be very difficult about that. The systematic sampling would be adding one more criteria. So you can set up the sampling interval, the K, and then you are selecting every case. So it could be every 9th unit or every 10th unit, but you can select that. For example, start from any unit between 1 and k. So if the k is 10, the sampling unit, the interval is 10. So 1 through 10, you can start from 1, and you can start from any 10th unit. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is a selection. And every 10th would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, so 20, 30, 40, and 50. So you can select 10 samples. So there's 10 individuals in the sample. So pros and the cons would be very similar, reducing the bias of the error, but the risk of the bias related with hidden periodic features. So we need to be careful. To stratify the random sampling is the grouping. So you would align on the individuals in the population based on the characteristic. So this is the white man, and this is the white woman, and this is a white woman, and this is a white man. And you would have the strata based on the race and the gender. And you would select some number from one group and in another group, and making sure that on the average, so the sample would be chosen from the selection. So you'd have the less bias. You'd have the less bias because you'd follow the procedure that sort out the groups in the unit based on the strata, and select the unit every some number, every case number, and you can select that. So it's very easy to use, but in case a full list of the population, but sometimes it's not available. So without the very clear information of the groups of the strata, it may not be very representative. All right. So the last one is the cluster sampling. We would have the more procedure. So for example, so if you specify that you want to collect the data from the Jonesboro or other places, so you would have to have the blocks and the clusters. And within the block or cluster, you would specify the standard that the picking up every third or every fifth of the population, and then you would go to the clusters. Alright, to select the blocks in the Albany in the New York area, go to each block and list all the units. From each unit, you'll follow that, utilize the sample. So suitable when we have the statistic population very large and flexible, but if we do not have the very clear information about the strata or the clusters, it will not be available. Alright, so if we use the non-probability sampling or even the probability sampling, we need to specify that we use a specific method because each on the method would have the pros and cons. So it's very clear that you need to provide more information about the sampling method. Alright, so the example question. So this is not a format of our exam, but I'm just letting to cover and review what we learned in this video. So this sampling method occurs when the units are selected on the basis of the the specified characteristics. Snowball sampling or quota sampling or the simple random sampling or the probability sampling. So there are many ways, but snowball is not available, but basics of the fully qualified characteristics will be the quota sampling, because as you could see in the proportion of the race in Arkansas by the census data, we could say that these are selected by the based on the matching the criteria or the matching the specified characteristics. So the quota sampling is the one. This one describes a sample whose aggregate characteristics closely approximate, which is very similar with the aggregate characteristic of the population. Exclusion, probability sampling, the equal probability of the census method, and representativeness. So using the representativeness means that it will be very similar. The sample data, the structure, the proportion, and the build of the sample data will resemble or look very similar with the population data. So that's the representativeness. So this one is a general term of the sample selected by the probability theory. So easy one, right? That's the probability sampling. Alright, so that's it about the regular part of the lecture. So good luck in your exam. So please keep me posted if you have any of the problems or issues, and I will add a more additional video about the lab session part, so that will be very helpful if we encounter any issues of the lab session or the lab part in the midterm exam. Thank you very much, and see you in the next video.